Hey everybody, I wanted to take some time today. After surveying the business land, we're coming up on our end of Q1 2025 and really talk about what impact artificial intelligence is having on the business world, specifically around whether or not it's ethical to become artificially intelligent and what that means. Before I get started, I want to take time to acknowledge and thank Pepperdine University. I've had an extraordinary experience getting into their Executive Doctor of Business Administration program, to the University of Phoenix, who empowered me to take control of my own education. And so I hope today what I can take you on is a journey to share with you what is coming, what has come, and what will become of a world where machines are performing too much of the intellectual capabilities of the humans. So let's start with the fact that when you talk about becoming intelligent or being intelligent, what does that truly mean? Now, in our modern society, intelligence is often linked to capitalistic purposes or making money. I'll say it that way. We don't have to use political ideology. We can just focus on the goal, which is to make money, because it takes money to live. And so as a result, prior to artificial intelligence, there was a massive disparity between the people who were born naturally intelligent and could apply that intelligence in a way that created value for business, and for the people who were not born on that particular spectrum. I want you to go back to the earliest time you realized potentially that there was a human who was in your presence that just was a little bit different. First grade. Think about this. The pick me, pick me, pick me, pick the pick me kid, who about 2 or 3 months into that, most kids stop liking them. They don't like it. Teacher's pet. By third grade, it's an audible groan. I went to 19 schools in 12 years across 4 cities and 2 states. Everywhere I went, it didn't matter if I was in the hood. I went to some really rough places. I went to some really nice schools. Didn't matter. Long Beach Poly, hey, how y'all doing? But ultimately, what you find is that humans eventually start developing a natural reaction to the pick me person. And this is a person who, no fault of their own, wants to demonstrate their capacity to retain the information, and potentially sees the teacher's acknowledgement of that information as a reward. So they are constantly putting their hand up, to the point that some teachers over the years just stop picking on them because they want other classmates to answer, other classmates to participate. Now, while those classmates may be equally as intelligent, there are people who are not as open in expressing their intelligence, but still have that aptitude. For the most part, what the teacher is trying to do is give everybody a chance to express what they have grasped from the information to create a collective learning environment. But you can't democratize that. There's no way to do that. No different than height, right? LeBron James is 6'8", 250 pounds. That's how he was born. And so as a result, height is something that we use. I go back to the Clark Gable, tall, dark, and handsome, right? Without genderizing things too much, what I wanted to point out is that the very first attribute that was considered appealing in society was tall. Tall is not something you can democratize at all. You're just born that way. You don't work for it. No different than intelligence. Intelligence is inherited. Now, it can be cultivated, but there are some people, a good majority of them, if they score incredibly high on the IQ score, as let's say a 30 or 40-year-old, you can go back to their childhood and speak with people who were connected to that human, and they'll tell you, yeah, we knew that from the youngest ages. They were displaying that. One of the things that I had a peculiar habit of doing was taking apart electronics. I'm from the 80s, 84. So by 88, I had begun to take apart every electronic I could see. Nobody told me how to grab it. There was no YouTube, weren't instructions. I just grabbed a screwdriver, looked in the back so that I could take it apart. Once I got apart the VCR, I began to observe there was this board, screen. It's got these silver lines on it. Everything's connected to it. I'm actually repairing the loading mechanism. Our tapes were getting stuck. And so we didn't have the money to replace the machine. So I had to figure out why I studied the mechanics. I'm just observing as a 4-year-old. As a 4-year-old, I began to develop those capabilities just naturally. I'm not the only human that's like that. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I went to schools where there were valedictorians for every class, salutatorians, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. Academia is a place where people can come and demonstrate their ability to retain and regurgitate. For the most part, any academic measurement of your capabilities is the ability to retain and regurgitate up to a certain point. And in that certain point, we begin to see this distinctive pattern. How many people like the know-it-all in their classes? Not that many. How many people like the know-it-all in their businesses where you work? And in that particular case, you have to ask yourself, why? Why is it that we still have retained the same basic response to a person who's distributing or displaying their desire to be rewarded? Oftentimes, those people are wanting to be rewarded in the same way the teacher, because there's an instant feedback mechanism. I display the right answer or what I presume to be the right answer. If it's right, I get a positive response. And that is one of the things that we have misunderstood about our development as humans. We never stop being the children that we are. And so what ends up happening is that over time, if you get labeled a know-it-all, even if you're fundamentally correct in any of your assertions, if your coworkers label you a know-it-all, that's now a negative. Then why is ChatGPT so beloved at a societal level? Because ChatGPT, for all intents and purposes, is a know-it-all. That's why we use it. We use it because there are things that machine can grab readily, quickly, in a discernible way we potentially could apply. And we love that. We don't like humans who do it, but we love the machines when they do it. And that brings me to the ethical dilemma. And I want to paint the ethical dilemma in a way that shows that this has nothing to do with just the worship of intelligence, but we can talk about the application of it. Anytime we have democratized a set of skills, there have been massive consequences. I want you to go back to thinking about the earliest times in humans and the first real innovation that humans had. Now we can start at the wheel, but let's go to the real innovation, fire. Think about what it was like to be in the tribes all over the world that are not connected by any kind of technology, so nobody knows anything. Inherently, some human discovered the ability to build fire, build and maintain it. Every society, ancient Egypt, the Indian, the Inca, the Aztec, the African, the Asian, the Asiatic, find me a culture that didn't have somebody who sparked the initial ownership of fire. That particular person, for all intents and purposes, became the leader of the particular tribe. Why? Because fire represented light, darkness represented predators, and fear. And so their natural intelligence gave them the ability to create something that hadn't been seen before. Then they begin to socialize fire, begin to democratize their invention. Guns. There's a straight line between the creation of fire, democratization of that ability, and guns. Now, I'm a gun owner, so I'm not here to say you shouldn't be able to protect yourself. What I'm talking about is democratization of fire created an increase in deaths. It's 1-to-1. We'll do the same thing, but in a different application, hunters. So now we don't have to use the intellectual faculty to create fire. What we do is use intellectual faculty to figure out the patterns of animals. Bison, let's use them. For those who are in America, know that the American bison was hunted to the point of extinction. Buffalo, excuse me. Extinction. So now when you have the democratization of fire, which created firearms, you democratize hunting techniques, teaching, you have extinction of animals all over the planet. Some of the largest, most powerful, beautiful animals like elephants, for example, with their ivory tusk. There's an impact. Anytime you democratize intelligence, the application of hunting skills is intelligence. There's an immediate impact. And now what we're talking about is the impact of artificial intelligence on business. And so let's go to the modern society. And it's very interesting that people have not thought about the ethical impact of becoming artificially intelligent. One of the reasons why I ended up dedicating my life to academia is because I want to be a professor. And as a professor, I'll be judged on my spoken word, not just up here, what I can write down, but my spoken word. Because I realized that in the next 2 to 5 years, until artificial intelligence gets a body and can synthesize its voice and think on its own, that's really the only way to distance yourself from being artificially intelligent. Because humans who were once the makers of marketing, that profession, have been incredibly impacted by artificial intelligence. Because in the desire to save on cost or to democratize the intellectual faculties around the art and science of marketing, humans have adopted AI rapidly. I don't know if that's mainly the most ethical thing. I'm not here to judge that. I want to talk about the impact of that. Okay, so competitor A uses artificial intelligence. Let's call it Claude. Competitor B uses ChatGPT. Competitor C uses Google Gemini. And competitor D uses Meta's Llama to do their marketing messaging. If you study artificial intelligence and really understand how artificial intelligence works, no matter what the large language model is, it's a master of repetition. And what I mean by that is if you say, write me a marketing plan in each of those LLMs and read the structure, it's nearly identical. So what happens when you use a master of structure and repetition like a machine is that company A, B, C, and D sound identical to the prospect who's reading. It goes something like this. And this is real life events that are happening to me at least 50 to 100 times a day. Hi, Chris. My name is XYZ. I work for company ABC. I see that you're the CEO of Iron Key Capital. Hey, Iron Key family. We help CEOs like you do DEF and achieve GHI. Would you like to meet with me for 30 minutes? That's the basic gist of the message. 50 times, that's 1,500 minutes. 100 times a day, that's 3,000 minutes of my time that are requested every day by near identical structure. Now, here's the thing. All of the competitors are using that structure, all of them. And so as a result, what ends up happening is that nobody can stand out. That didn't used to be the case. So the impact of becoming artificially intelligent is everybody is. See, Apple became the dominant player that it became because it was the best marketer. Best. There wasn't anybody like Apple in the marketing game 10 years ago. Nobody. They knew who their customer was and they played to it. Go back and look. Take a look at an Apple commercial. Go back 10 years. Here's what you'll find. You're going to find a millennial doing something incredibly daring and risky, incredibly expressive. They might be skateboarding, surfing, they may be doing art, whatever it is. It was always a millennial doing something incredibly impactful. That was an expression of who they were. Now, the interesting thing about that is if you go back 10 years, Gen Alpha was, in their formative years. So you had teenagers, early 20s, and you had the formative Gen Alpha. What Apple understood very well is that they wanted to become the cool company. You were cool if you had an Apple. How much so that it became a running joke if you happen to have an Android. Go and look up memes about the green bubble and how Apple users make fun of the fact that Android users, right, aren't part of the cool crowd. So what happens? Apple in their marketing genius gets the young millennial, the early 20s millennial, and the young Gen Alpha when they get their first phone, because everybody wants to be like everybody. Samsung comes along with the Galaxy, which you could argue has superior features. And they realize because they're late to the customer acquisition party, meaning the early portion of their lives, their commercials have to look incredibly different. Their commercials are what we call competitive displacement. Competitive displacement goes something like this. Come on, guys. You've grown up. A phone can do way more than just take pictures. Oh, you want to do group chats, you want to do this, all of the Apple features they can think of. And if you've noticed some of the commercials, they walk past people who are waiting in line for the next iPhone that looks just like the last iPhone. And they're smirking. They look down. Their strategy is competitive displacement. And so from a marketing standpoint, that strategy, that structure comes from the mind of humans. You have to think that way. Artificial intelligence can only at this stage do what is requested of it. So leadership at Samsung understood we have to do a competitive displacement. Leadership at Apple understands we do customer acquisition. Now, let's go in a different route, different industry. So forget the phones. Have you ever noticed in luxury car commercials, there's something very particular about them? I don't care if it's Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Audi, you name it. It's typically somebody in their later 40s, early 50s, nice watch, very well kept, driving up the coast, as you can see in my background, on their way to a business meeting, leaving a business meeting with their spouse who seems incredibly happy as they're going to, because their customer, their buyer persona is completely different than the buyer persona of Apple, as I talked about with the young millennial. Their buyer persona is somebody who is a bit higher of an earner, and typically higher earnings come later in their career. And so the way that they position information to their customers about why they should align with that brand is based on them being able to see themselves as that person. AI can't do that. AI cannot do that at this current stage. What AI can do right now and how it's being used is create text, and lots of it, even video, and lots of it. But a marketing mastermind or a marketing mind is a particular type of thinker, just like an engineer, like a scientist. If you are not naturally a marketing mind, meaning that you want to dive into the psychological drivers of a human to make them understand what drives them to buy. Have you ever asked yourself why, for example, you walk right past the mall kiosk salespeople like they don't exist? You keep your eyes straight forward to walk right into a store and buy something. There's a reason we do that. We don't like selling. We don't like to be sold. We love to buy. And that's a psychological thing. Go and observe a mall, just a couple of minutes. Stand in a mall and watch how many people ignore the mall kiosk people who are trying to sell them things that eventually become products in stores like Target. When I was young, I sold Cutco knives door to door. And people kind of laughed and they were like, Cutco knives, what is this? And we were door to door. People said it was a multi-level marketing scheme. Cutco is in some of the largest distributors and retailers on the planet now, because their strategy that they executed from the intellectual faculties of a human were that we needed to get our brand out there door to door. We needed to drive brand awareness. And ultimately, if we are great at driving brand awareness, that eventually will attract our real target customer, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Costcos, the Sams of the world, who could buy in bulk in a way the end consumer never could. Always out of the mind of humans do solutions to problems come. And so ethically speaking, as we continue to adopt AI across business functions, the one business function that I can see being most impacted is marketing. And really what it comes down to is lead generation. Now, at a certain segment of the market, higher end of the market, lead generation is something that's kind of executed very well, like Microsoft. If you're Microsoft, you've done a very good job of generating awareness of who you are. So leads come into you because you're top of mind. IBM, Hewlett Packard, Dell Computers, Cisco, Symantec, Lenovo, HP. We can just keep going on and on around the big brands. But when you're not a big brand, when you're not very well known, how do you compete? And in the marketplace today, we use automation and we use artificial intelligence to try to get in front of humans that we want to buy from us. AI and automation has turned us into the mall kiosk. We are the mall kiosk people. It's highly disruptive to be in the middle and the flow of your day, and then the sales message comes in that looks just like the last 13 that you read. And so AI's impact is now making marketing less effective because there are not marketers on top of what the marketing systems of the business should be. So the impact is that while we've democratized access to verbosity in a box, we have lost the ability to understand how verbosity is used in the flow of marketing. Because typically people, if you're not in a structured, multi-tiered, multi-divisional environment, marketing is looked at purely as a function to generate leads for sales. And marketing does far more than that, far more. And that, to me, is going to be one of the biggest impacts that we're going to see over the next 2 to 5 years as marketing continues to feel the squeeze. I believe Sam Altman said 95% of marketing will be done by AI, machines talking to machines. Now, let me talk about the impact and the ethics. In a meeting yesterday with my team at IronKey, I wanted to demonstrate. Now, of course, there wasn't a voice synthesizer. So for those who are diehard AI, I totally understand. But I wanted to get to a point. In the middle of the meeting, I stopped as I was speaking and I just said, okay, AI, go ahead and take over. And I paused. There were 9 note takers in the meeting. I just paused. Everybody paused with me. It took about 15, 20 seconds before I demonstrated. There's a point. AI is not in its current stage of able to take over meetings. But I wanted to go a step further. One of the discussion points that we were having was around a development shop, dev shop. These are software companies that create custom software for businesses. And one of potential prospects for the business wants to investigate one of the AI agentic solutions we're developing. And I asked why. And the team member, the leader, responded back, well, because they want business development. And I said, why? And everybody kind of pausing. I could feel the discomfort level rising, but I was getting to a point. It wasn't being rhetorical. Why? And he was like, well, because they want more sales. Why? He finally got to the answer. I think he thought about it a little bit deeper. He paused. I loved it. I love the fact that he thought that critically of it. And he says, well, what they told me is that they have excess capacity for their developers. And as a result of having excess capacity, they need more clients. Boom. Now we're getting somewhere. And I asked him, I was like, rather than focus on agentic AI as a solution, what is the reason that the business would hire more resources than they have work for? Did they get to that point because they once had a large client and they lost that client? Did they get to that point because they had a suite of work that ultimately evaporated and now they have to respond to market pressures? Are they potentially a company that was built off of referrals and referrals are no longer working? What's the business imperative that's driving them to need business development? Because until you uncover that particular issue, you're throwing a screwdriver at a transmission. And for those who understand, you can't fix a transmission with a screwdriver. And these are the types of things that artificial intelligence and the sprawl of automation tools are going to continue to create for businesses as they continue to seek artificially intelligent ways to solve problems that are outside of their scope of solving. Because if they could solve them, they would. The market's under incredible pressure. There are 488,000 development shops in the world, 221,000 in America alone. And they're all using artificial intelligence in a certain way. And one of the hardest things about being a development shop building custom software is you typically can only communicate but so much, and it's custom to that end client. You don't get to retain the intellectual property, develop it into a product, and then productize it so that other people can have it, like a la Microsoft with Windows. And so we have far more impacts of artificial intelligence than we're realizing. And artificial intelligence, for all its glory, is going to cause businesses a lot more pain as nobody can stand out. And I'll close off my first presentation of what I believe and hope to believe. I won't even believe it. I hope that we have a discussion and a debate around this. If company A, ChatGPT, using GPT, company B using Claude, company C using Gemini, company D using Llama, company E now using Grok, are all using that for their marketing function. Now they're all the most intelligent marketer in the industry for their particular product against all their competitors. Who stands out? And what is the impact of not being able to stand out because everybody sounds exactly the same? Thank you so much for taking some time to have an intellectual, what I hope to be a discourse. I'd love for us to continue this in the comments, and we'll look to bring on others as we continue to explore the ethics and impact of artificial intelligence. Have a great day.